The flying type is truthfully what I consider to be the most balanced type in Pokemon, having so many options in order to fulfill a solid offensive and defensive purpose across players' teams, and the fact that it's one of the frequent types you run into a lot across your journey, whether it was for trainer battles or for wild encounters. And in today's video, we will determine whether a Pokémon Brick Bronze hardcore Nuzlocke using flying types is possible to do or just a fictitious idea. It all begins in Midis Town, where I head to the professor's lab to select a starter Pokemon. Now my problem for this case is the obvious choice is Rowlet, considering it is a grass and flying type, but a solid part of me really wanted to select Charmander solely because of the fact its final evolution gains the flying type, which is unlike Decidueye, who becomes a ghost type later on. So in the end, I ultimately choose to use Rowlet in this case, since I also need something that wouldn't succumb to the very first gym in the game, which is an electric type one. And once I'm at Route 1, I can pick up another teammate, which is a fletchling that I nicknamed Turkish Airlines. Once I head to Gale Forest, I'm also forced to wait a couple minutes in-game so that once night falls, I can pick up a third bird, which is a Hoot Hoot that I nickname Italian Air. And then Linda proves to be light work thanks to Fletchling, who can avoid any defensive drops thanks to big pecs, and also being super effective against her Pancham, in which I cross the bridge to Route 3 and then eventually into Sylvan City. Let's just pretend I didn't forget to press record on this gym fight, however, but this is pretty much the aftermath of the battle. As I enter Route 5, I am able to grind the team just a little bit against this guy in order to evolve Fletchling into Fletchinder and Rowlet into Dartrix. I also make sure to head into the old graveyard so that I can pick up either a Murkrow or Rookidee, and I decide to wait until daytime to pick up a Rookidee, since having a steel type later on through the game will come in handy. And I eventually find a Rookidee, which I nickname Fred's Airlines, of which I also train some more in order to evolve it into a Corvisquire and also evolve Hoot Hoot into Noctowl. Just before I enter Brimber City, we battle Jake, with which his Blitzel could cause trouble, but it ends up being rather easier than I expected, so I just breezed past him with Corvisquire, and then it also hits me just now that I forgot to pick up an encounter in Route 4, which was a Pidgey that I catch and name Emirates Airlines, with which another bit of grinding allows me to evolve it into a Pidgeotto. So once I enter Brimber City, I talk to Sebastian and then head to Route 6, where I could pick up our 6th teammate of the run, a Zubat that I catch and name Egyptian Air. And then head inside Mount Igneous, where I get past the Team Eclipse grunts, despite the fact most of them were annoying with status conditions, and luckily for us, the admin who owns a Lonatone does not have a rock move in this point of the game, so I am able to let Dartrix deal with it. Once the volcano is safe, I head back to the city, where I could now access the gym, where it also allows me to evolve Zubat into Golbat, and I'm able to challenge Sebastian's fire types. With Noctowl's decent special defense, this makes it the safest option to lead against his Litleo, which in overheat just does pitiful damage, and I can just repeatedly click on confusion against it, being able to take it down rather easily. Against Growlithe, I decided to switch into Fletchinder, and prior to the battle, I made a stop by the Battle Coliseum in order to teach it the move Acrobatics, so that thanks to our part fire typing, we easily resist this gym with no issue at all, and I also have a form of longevity in Roost. And while an Acrobatics does not get the KO here, it just causes Growlithe to use Overheat, which does nothing at all, and then I use Agility to make sure I outspeed his incoming Magmar, so I don't risk a nasty feint attack off of it. So I take out the Growlithe after healing back some health with Roost, and once Magmar is out, an Acrobatics steals half of its HP, while an Overheat from Magmar does a lot more than I expected it would, but that should be no surprise considering its base 100 special attack stat, and in the end, another Acrobatics defeats Sebastian to net us the Brimstone badge. As I head to Route 7, I can pick up another flying type around this area, which is a Yanma that I catch and name Saudi Airlines. And once I take care of the Lumberjacks to fix the dam, I can enter Laguna Lake and head to the laboratory to dig up some potential flying types, which is either an Aerodactyl, an Archon, or a Togepi. And because I was honestly fine with any of them with a little lean towards Aerodactyl, I end up finding a plume fossil so that I can revive it to obtain the Archon, nicknaming it Delta Airlines. And by fishing around this river, I can pick up a Magikarp that I nicknamed Singapore Airlines. In Route 8, before I do some 2v2 battles, I also pick up a Starly that I nicknamed Qatar Airways, and then I proceed with the aforementioned 2v2 battles where Starly evolves into Saravia and Magikarp evolves into Gyarados. And then I reach Rose Cove City, where after I head to the lighthouse to deal with Team Eclipse, Fletchinder also evolves into Talonflame and Yanma evolves into Yanmega. So with quite the team, it's only a matter of time before Team Eclipse gets destroyed completely and I finish it off with the evolution of our Saravia into Staraptor. As I head inside the third gym to obtain my next badge, I also manage to evolve Archon into Archops, and then I challenge Quentin's water types. I lead with Yanmega against Whelmer, and while I generally dislike taking a critical hit this early on in the game, I am still left with enough HP where Giga Drain can heal me back just a little bit, so that the incoming Gorbis can also let me heal back furthermore with Giga Drain, and then fortunately enough, I don't get burned by Scald, so I'm able to take it down. This leaves only his Huntail, who can be dangerous with its Ice Fang, which it does go for in the end, and even worse, I get frozen on the spot afterwards. This prompts me to switch out into Gyarados, who not only could lower its attack with Intimidate, but also Huntail chooses to go with Crunch, which does practically nothing to me, and a followed up bite finishes it off to earn us the Float badge. Right before I head to Route 9, I was also able to evolve Corvisquire into Corviknight, and then I challenge both Jake and Tess to a battle by which Gyarados can mostly take care of them, and I head through Route 10, climb Mount Kragenos, and at the very ends of the cliffs, I try to see if I could catch a Gligar onto the team, but I unfortunately run into a Woobat instead, which I just run away from. And then I carry on the climb to the peaks to take the air balloon that takes us to Anthean City. As I talk to Gerald, I pretty much waste no time in heading to the 4th gym, since it's mostly getting taken care of by our Archops, and once I'm able to fight Steven, I lead with Archops yet again, who gets the flinch with a Rock Slide as compensation for Intimidate lowering my attack, and another one defeats the Staraptor. Then against the Skarmory, I decide to use U-turn to not only break it sturdy, but to also position my Talonflame into the field so that I can use Flame Charge on the Skarmory where it does minimal damage, but it does trigger a Flame Body to activate after Skarmory uses Steel Wing on me, which gives me plenty of room to switch out into Archops yet again on an incoming Aerial Ace that only deals a laughable 8% of HP, and Skarmory falls to burn damage. This was necessary to have Archops out on the field, since the only thing capable of taking on his Aerodactyl without risking too much damage is Archops, and it ends up missing its Thunderfang, which gives me room to take it out with a Rock Slide. The second Staraptor annoyingly lowers my attack with Intimidate, but Archops just dunks on the Staraptor with a Rock Slide flinch that allows me to knock it out the next turn, leaving only his Ace Braviary, which can barely scathe me outside of using Superpower, so with 2 Rock Slides and an Acrobatics, we knock out the Braviary and we obtain the Soaring badge. Once I meet with Tess by the sewers, I go outside to rescue Jake, although this results in a battle against Cypress that I forget to press record for, but essentially, this was the outcome, and I put a halt to the Bomber's plans in order to go back to Kragenos Peaks and then down Route 11 where I travel to Iridia City. This means that we need to head to the ruins in order to find the gym leader being troubled by Team Eclipse, and then I unlock access to the gym where I am able to battle Ryan's ground types. I lead with Yanmega, with which a single Giga Drain is able to destroy the Quagsire, and then against the Steelix, I make the hard switch into Gyarados, who can lower its attack with Intimidate, and I begin the procedure of setting up as many Dragon Dances as possible, given that Steelix can barely even hit me at all, with which at plus 3 attack and speed, I'm able to go all out and destroy everything in sight with Aqua Tail and Ice Fang for his Mega Garchomp in order to obtain a fairly easy Crater badge. I then make my way through Route 12 and inside Route 13, where I navigate it until I reach our next destination, Floroma City, with which I waste no time into going for the Grass Gym considering the overwhelming advantage we have in this place, so it's not long before I solve the gym puzzle and challenge Fissy's grass types. by which our Archops can just completely breeze past the majority of his team, except for Tangrowth, who surprisingly survives and is able to set up Sunny Day, which, while I can still outspeed and knock out, makes me switch out on the next turn to Corviknight so as to avoid the Solar Beam that's coming up next. And I can just take down the Venusaur with Brave Bird in order to net us the Harvest Badge. As I receive Rock Climb in order to move through Route 14 and reach the entrance of Route 15, I actually stop to catch a flying type in this area, which is a Noibat that I nicknamed Algerian Airlines. And it's not long before our Dragon Bat evolves into a Noivern, which we can use to single-handedly face off against Jake, who's now a Team Eclipse member, and slaughter his entire team with its stab moves and recovering with Roost whenever needed, giving us a way to now enter Route 15 and navigate through the Snowy Mountain and eventually reach Frostvale City. With most of our team nearing the level cap of 74, I decide to enter the 7th gym in order to challenge Zeke's Dark types. By leading with Noivern, I instantly go for a Hurricane, which manages to get the confusion, and Honchkrow ends up hitting itself in the process, so we escape the one-on-one battle unscathed. Next was Crocodile, and Noivern ends up locking in because not only do I get a critical hit with Hurricane, but we also pull off another confusion. Although Crocodile just bypasses that and hits us with a fairly powerful crunch, and then another Dragon Pulse takes down the Crocodile. This brings in Bisharp, where I switch out into Talonflame here, so that we can just keep on spamming flame charges and healing back whenever I'm low on HP with Roost. But against Umbreon, I decide to make a switch into Corviknight here, who's able to take on every single move that Umbreon has, but this punishes me because it goes for Confuse Ray, and while I'm able to taunt the next turn, the following 2 turns causes me to be incapable of hitting the Umbreon at all, as I get hurt in confusion, and horrifyingly enough, Assurance almost knocks us out because it pulls off a critical hit in the end, so I end up switching back into Archops, who gets hit with a Toxic, and while the next Acrobatics is a critical hit, I end up getting confused the next turn, and I decide to take the risk of trying to get through confusion to kill the Umbreon, but it backfires and I end up hitting myself in confusion while Umbreon heals back with Moonlight. This causes me to switch out yet again into Yamega, and this time, a Bug Buzz manages to get it to half HP, and Umbreon decides to attack with Assurance, meaning that we can take it down the next turn with another Bug Buzz. This causes Pangoro to come out next, and Air Slash ends up getting a low roll, which makes it survive on a slither of HP, but I am hit by Dark Pulse that doesn't even do too much, and I can take it down the next turn with a Giga Drain, leaving only Zeke's Houndoom as his last Pokemon, and I obviously switch out into Gyarados, who gets hit by a Shadow Ball after Houndoom Mega Evolves, and knowing that I will survive the next move regardless of what it is, I click on Dragon Dance to get a buff to attack and speed, and then afterwards, I can click Waterfall to knock out the Devil Dog in order to secure a hard-fought Contrast Badge. As I'm about to head to the next area, Tess stops me for a battle, and what I end up doing is just set up one Dragon Dance against her Garchomp, and then the rest just fall to Ice Fang, save for Haxorus that could have gone wrong and caused us to lose our Gyarados. And then slide down the mountain to Cosmos Valley, and then eventually into Port Deca, where I receive the HM for Surf. As I surf through Route 17 until I reach Crescent Town, the first order of business is to infiltrate the Team Eclipse base and make it through the security so that I can unlock access to the rest of the gates and chase after my lost parents, by which Jake stalls for time with not only his goofy sequence happening right now, but also a battle of which it ends just as you would expect it to. And then I move to Route 18, making my way through the swamp, down the outpost, and finally into the Demon's Tomb. Once Hoopa is revealed, we can challenge Cypress one last time, by which I lead with the Amenga against his Greninja, and it decides to pointlessly set up Toxic Spikes against me, and a Bug Buzz kills the frog. I make the misclick of going for Giga Drain against his Decidueye, which punishes me roughly with a critical hit Brave Bird that ends up not killing us thankfully, and a followed up Air Slash defeats it. With Incineroar being next, I decide to switch out into Gyarados as I go for Dragon Dance, trying to set up as much as possible, but Incineroar still ends up doing so much damage with Outrages, and it only leaves me at just +2 attack and speed before finishing it off with a Waterfall. Empoleon doesn't pressure me at all, so 2 crunches is what it takes, and Sceptile also falls to an Ice Fang, leaving only his Charizard X for last, where I click on Waterfall, but unfortunately it does not get the one shot, nor do I get the flinch, and Charizard ends up taking out my Gyarados with a Dragon Claw at the very end, leaving Archops to finish the job with an Acrobatics, and with Cypress defeated, we also fight the Hoopa, of which we can take care of it with a Master Ball for fun, and then I head back to Crescent Town to take on the final gym leader of this run, Captain B and her Ghost types. I lead with Yanmega against her Gengar and use Detect so that I can trigger Speed Boost and outpace it on the next turn with an Air Slash, which hilariously gets disabled and yet causes the flinch anyways, so talk about an equal deal. What follows after is just me stalling for turns with passive damage from Bug Buzz and protecting with Detect until Air Slash is finally enabled back for me in order to take care of her incoming Decidueye that survives the first one, yet causes the flinch yet again, so we freely take it out on the next turn. Her Spiritomb is next and she ends up using Sucker Punch, which isn't too bad since I'm able to take it down a turn later after she uses Sucker Punch again, which leaves me low on health, prompting me to make a switch out into Staraptor against Miss Magius, who is now our substitute for our fallen Gyarados, and Brave Bird secure the kill. Next was Aegislash, which I switch out into Talonflame, and there is really nothing this thing could do since any contact move it makes causes it to risk a burn, which I do pull off eventually, and then I switch out into Archops to position myself properly against her upcoming Mega Sableye, by which I can knock out the Aegislash with an Earthquake, and then get Sableye on the field and go for an Acrobatics which does half of its health, but a Shadow Ball puts me in range of Defeatist activating, and I end up switching out into Noivern, who can finish off the Sableye with a couple Dragon Pulses to defeat Captain B and earn the Haunted Badge. With 8 badges obtained, we can now head to the Royal League and traverse through Victory Road so that I can put my birds to the test and challenge the Elite Four. Up against Bellara's Poison types, I lead with Archops against her Toxapex and immediately click on Earthquake that doesn't even deal half of its health, and Scald also manages to put me within Defeatist range, so this means that I have to switch out into Noivern, who is the Scald fine, but what follows after is just a couple turns of watching Toxapex stall me from my PP with Baneful Bunkers and recovers as I click on Hurricane again and again and again, which proves to be more annoying than you can imagine. But eventually, once it runs out of Baneful Bunker PP, I decide to switch out into Corviknight to use Taunt and then deal as much damage as possible with Fly, despite the fact that I risk a burn from Scald, which I do unfortunately get soon after. But thankfully, I managed to stall out her Scald PP entirely, and then I decide to bring out Talonflame, who is now safe from any move she could throw, and set up Substitute alongside a lot of Bulk Ups, getting to +6 attack, and then I can just click on Aerial Aces to my heart's desire, knocking out the Toxapex and the Alolan Muck. The Crobat ends up U-turning into Dragalge, which I accidentally click on Substitute instead, and said Dragalge actually survives the incoming Aerial Ace, where it breaks my Substitute with a Shadow Ball before it falls down to Life Orb damage. Even worse, Crobat uses Cross Poison, which gets the critical hit and puts me in range where my Substitute will not work, and it uses U-turn into Salazzle, of which it ends up outspeeding me, and thanks to Focus Sash, Aerial Ace does not get us the one shot. In this turn, I also take a gamble on whether Salazzle will use Sludge Bomb again or not, and thankfully, it doesn't as it goes for Flamethrower, putting me at just 4 HP as I use Roost, and on the following turn, she uses Will-O-Wisp randomly, which allows me to get the kill the turn after. Crobat comes out yet again, and this time it decides to be a jerk because not only am I hit by a soft Acrobatics which lets me use Substitute, but it reveals that it had Haze all along, wiping out my stat buffs entirely, and ultimately, what I decide to do is to punish Crobat with a burn via Flame Body, and I stall with Roost a little bit where I get my burn, prompting that I go on the offensive a little bit before switching out into Yanmega who I can use Detect with to not only burn with chip damage, but also get a speed boost. And bizarrely enough, even at +1, I'm slower than a Crobat, so I get hit by a nasty acrobatics before I take out the bat at all, which leaves only her Mega Gengar last, and against my bitter judgment, I know that I won't be killing this Gengar unless I get off some flinches, and unfortunately, this means that our young Mega has to bite the dust. One Sludge Bomb heads my way, and leaving Staraptor to come out next and finish the job with a Brave Bird, defeating Pillara after an insanely long and annoying battle. Next was Dwayne's Rock types, by which this is our toughest matchup yet, since his lead Cleavor can be very detrimental to our team, which unfortunately results in the sacking of our Archops after I use Acrobatics, since I needed to try breaking its Focus Sash first. And Stoneaxe also manages to lay down the Stealth Rock Downs as well. This however means that Staraptor can pick up the kill with a Quick Attack a turn later, and then against Tyranitar, a single close combat is what it takes to defeat it. With Cradily sent out on the next turn, this puts me in perfect position for my plan, since what I can do is switch out into Corviknight, who is resistant to every single move this rock plant has in its arsenal, and I can set up Bulk Ups while taunting to prevent any barriers or protects being used. And the damage I receive from Giga Drain is immediately held back by Riftovers, so it's not long before I go on the offensive and click on Steel Wing across every single teammate he has, defeating Dwayne with quite some ease. The third fight is against Teddy's Bug types, with which I do have to apologize for the severe lag in the footage you see, considering the graphics were a little too much. Noivern takes care of the Galvantula that pointlessly sets up Sticky Web, and against Volcarona, it does manage to survive the Hurricane I use, but it decides to use Giga Drain out of all moves it has on me, and a Dragon Pulse takes down the Moth. Against Low Kicks, I decide to try making my plan succeed, in which I switch out into Talonflame, who can punish Low Kicks for the burn every time it makes contact with me, while also setting up Bulk Ups to be as physically defensive as possible, in which it also reverses my attack drops from Lunge back to normal, and then the combination of Flame Charge and Flame Body ends up sufficing to take down the Low Kicks after I recover health back with Roost. The Frostmoth is dead to one Flame Charge, and his ace Mega Scizor can barely do anything at all, so a Flame Charge also seals its fate to defeat Teddy. Last of the Elite Four is Lina and her Fairy types, by which we have the ultimate answer for in Corviknight, who easily spams Bulk Ups with no problem at all, getting to +6 attack and defense, and to add insult to injury, I also click on taunts to stall out her Reflect turns, which I eventually pull off as soon as I go on the offensive with Steel Wing, taking the Grimmsnarl down easily, and Mimikyu also stands no chance from Steel Wing, and the same is applied to her Primarina, who ends up dying to a Fly, her Dedenne, Shiinotic, and Mega Mawile, who almost got threatening since I get paralyzed the turn it uses Swords Dance. And it also had Iron Head, which we could have suffered from para-flinching, though thankfully we breeze past that and defeat Lina, leaving only one challenge left in this run that we worked so hard to reach for and prove our birds are the best of the best, and that is the fight against Champion Brad. I begin by leading with Talonflame against Klefki, which I begin by setting up Bulk Ups as much as I could. But after seeing the screens get set up and how much Foul Play does to me, it wasn't long before I decided to switch out into Corviknight after dealing some damage with Flame Charge, with which I can carry on setting up the Bulk Up tactic yet again, only this time I'm actually bulky enough where not only do I manage to get to +6 attack and defense, but Foul Play doesn't deal as much damage, and thanks to the passive recovery from leftovers, means that we can now take down the Klefki with Steel Wing. The Rotom Wash ends up helping me by using Pain Split, which I am healed back with, and I take to the skies with Fly that's nowhere close of getting the kill, so on the next turn, I get hit by a Pain Split yet again, and the second Fly still misses out on the kill, leaving Rotom Wash to click on Will-O-Wisp, which misses, allowing our Steel Bird to finish the job with Fly. In comes Annihilate, who tries to set up with Bulk Ups of its own, but it's too late because a +6 fly still takes it down in one shot. And the same is applied to Brad's Gudra, who uses Dragon Pulse before dying. Next was Colossal, which is actually scary in this case because Steel Wing does not do so much, and Flamethrower comes my way, which we can barely survive and luckily not get burned by, leaving us plenty of room to take it down with another Steel Wing. This leaves Brad's final Pokemon and ace, the shiny Mega Metagross, where I can go for Fly on the next turn as I am hit by a weak pursuit, and I can deal a lot of damage by courtesy of a critical hit. But shockingly enough, our Steel Bird ends up receiving terrible karma as Rock Slide comes down and pulls off a critical hit of its own, marking the defeat of our French Airlines who carried us so much throughout this run. But its sacrifice was not going to be in vain, because Staraptor can come out and lower its attack with Intimidate and click on Close Combat in order to not only defeat Brad, but also prove that flying types are able to complete a Pokémon Brick Bronze Hardcore Nuzlocke. I had so much fun using this type, especially watching Corviknight's bulk shred past a lot of the toughest trainers in the game, and I am more so amazed by how minimal our sacrifices were throughout the run, which is really a good sign to see, especially since flying types could have prompted a lot of deaths in the early game. As always, if you guys reached this far into the video, why not drop a like and subscribe to the channel, as it helps me out a lot. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.